I was new to university in 2009, and I was moving to a dorm with a roommate I haven't seen before. I got there before him, and when he got there, he introduced himself as Ross. Right from the very start, I knew he wasn't too normal. When we met, I said, "Hey, nice to meet you." And he literally just stood there with a big smile on his face and not even blinking, like he was thinking about something funny. Then he said, "Oh, hey," after a few seconds, and then he let out a very awkward laugh. I tried to have a conversation with him anyways, but he just didn't look like he wanted to talk like that. He just spoke the necessary. Like when I asked him things, I knew he was awkward, but soon I would discover that he was much more than that. In my first week in the university, I noticed something weird. Ross looked like he never left his room. I didn't know what he did all day, but he was with his laptop all the time. There was a day when I got in the dorm really tired from my day, and I went to sleep around 8 p.m. Suddenly, I wake up to see Ross sitting on his bed and looking directly at me. I jumped. "Man, what are you doing?" I said. Then he told me, "Nothing. Some people just look good while sleeping." Man, I didn't even have words, didn't know what to say. So I just said, "Oh, all right then." And then he apologized and slept. I was already really uncomfortable with him. The next day, when I woke up, he had already left the dorm. And later, in the university, I found him, and he did something that sent me chills. I saw him looking at a couple of girls who were sitting on the grass next to a tree and chatting. He had an almost threatening smile on his face. After maybe 4 minutes, he saw me, and when he did, he put his finger on his lips. He was telling me to stay quiet. I just gave him a fake smile and turned around, creeped out. At this point, I already made 3 new friends, and I told them about all the red flags, and they got really scared and told me to stay safe. That night, I made up my mind to stay out as late as possible to avoid the dorm until I knew Ross would be asleep. My friends and I decided to hang out at a 24-hour cafe, talking about anything and everything except Ross. We laughed, joked, and tried to push the unease away. When I finally got back to the room, it was almost 3 a.m. I quietly opened the door, hoping Ross was already asleep. But as soon as I stepped inside, I saw him sitting on his bed, staring at the door like he had been waiting for me. He had that same unsettling smile on his face, but then he said something that sent me chills. "I'm glad you're not like the people that make fun of me." "Yeah, man," I muttered, avoiding his gaze. When I woke up the next morning, Ross was gone. The chair was empty, and his bed was neatly made, like he hadn't even slept in it. My stomach lurched as I noticed his laptop was positioned to face my bed, and what was written on the screen shocked me. "Thank you for being cool to me. Maybe you don't want to go to the university today." And its angle was perfectly towards where I had been sleeping. But the worst comes now. I went to the university anyways, being really cautious, and when I got there were police cars everywhere. After a few minutes, I saw my friends running towards me, and I asked what was going on. "Your roommate, man. They say he was inside there with a gun." I froze, but at the same time I was not completely surprised. The police were swarming the campus, directing students away from there. I could see officers talking into their radios, with their faces tense. My friends huddled around me with their expressions as a mix of fear and shock. We were all escorted to a large lecture hall where the university staff tried to keep everyone calm and informed. They said the situation was under control, but they wouldn't let us leave. Was that message on the laptop a warning, or was it a trap? When they finally allowed us to leave, my friends insisted I stayed with one of them for the night. The next day, I learned more details. Ross had been found in our dorm room, sitting on his bed with the gun beside him. He didn't hurt anyone, but the authorities said he was planning to. They took him into custody, and he was being evaluated for mental health issues. The thought of how calmly he had spoken to me the night before sent a fresh wave of chills down my spine. I moved out of the dorm the very next day. My friends helped me pack up my things, and I didn't even look at Ross's side of the room. I just wanted to get out of there, to forget the whole thing. But even as I settled into a new place, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had escaped from something terrible. The thought still haunts me to this day. What if I hadn't been cool to him? You gotta be nice to people sometimes. Some crazy, disturbing stuff happened to me when I was in college in 2014. In one particular night, I was doing some homework with my friends on a building inside the campus, and the nightmare began when I decided to leave alone at around 11 p.m. to go back to my dorm. Some minutes passed, and as I was going through a big yard, I saw this strange dude next to a tree with a black backpack. Keep in mind that we were really the only ones out there. This guy didn't look like an ordinary person because I could see that he was wearing black and white makeup, almost like a black metal musician. Something felt really off and I felt confused. Suddenly this man starts to go in the same direction as me. He was in the distance ahead. Then he turned to the right and disappeared. As I was getting closer to the dorm, I hear footsteps on the grass. I looked back and saw a person wearing a black ski mask in the distance behind me. At this point, I began to panic and didn't know if I should just run. I didn't know if it was the same guy or if it was another person that he knew helping him with whatever he was planning to do. I was so scared that I didn't even pay attention to the clothes they were wearing. I decided to keep walking at a steady pace, trying not to show any signs of fear. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I knew that if I started running, it might provoke whoever was behind me to chase. The footsteps on the grass seemed to grow louder though, and I couldn't help but glance back a few times. I quickly calculated my options. The dorm was still a good 5-minute walk away, and the path I was on was poorly lit. There were no other people around, no buildings nearby where I could seek refuge. My only hope was to make it to the dorm before this person would start to run. I picked up my pace, trying to walk as fast as I could without breaking into a full sprint. Suddenly, I heard a noise that froze me in my tracks. A low, eerie whistle coming from behind me. I turned around slowly, and my stomach dropped when I saw that the man in the ski mask had stopped, standing motionless about 50 feet away. His head was tilted slightly to the side as if he were studying me. Then, out of nowhere, he began to walk faster. Panic surged through me and I took off running. But when I turned back, he was gone. Where in the hell had he gone? I could see the dorm building now, just a few hundred feet away, and I prayed that someone would be near the entrance to help me. As I reached the entrance, I slammed into the door, frantically pulling out my keycard to swipe it. Shit was so bad that it took me a couple tries to get the card to register. Finally, the door clicked open and I stumbled inside. I shut the door behind me and pressed my back against it, trying to catch my breath, but my mind was racing. Was the man still out there waiting? Were these two people with bad intentions? After a few moments of silence, I slowly peeked through the small window in the door. The yard outside was empty, the man in the ski mask nowhere to be seen. I let out a shaky breath, with relief washing over me. But just as I was about to turn away, I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. The strange man with the black and white makeup was standing under a tree with his backpack slung over one shoulder, watching the dorm entrance with an eerie stillness. I quickly moved away from the door, praying that he didn't see me. I hurried down the hallway toward my dorm room, locking the door behind me as soon as I got inside. I grabbed my phone and called campus security, explaining what had just happened. They assured me they would send someone to patrol the area and advised me to stay in my room for the night. I thanked them and hung up. Then I told my friends about it. I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe those two weird people were still out there, waiting. I spent the rest of the night lying in bed. Sleep was impossible, and I found myself staring at the ceiling and wondering what would have happened if I hadn't made it to the dorm in time. Weeks passed, and I never saw those people again, and I think nobody knows their true identities. The experience left a lasting mark on me, and I became more cautious, always making sure I'm not alone at night. And even though nothing else happened, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had narrowly escaped something truly horrifying that night. The college I went to was insanely old, like from 1910. One of the biggest stories about that place is that back in the 70s, someone committed the S-word on the campus by hanging from a tree, and some really chilling things happened to me around 2012 when I studied there. One day, I was walking around the campus with my friend when we suddenly see somebody running towards our direction. It was a girl, and when we asked her what was wrong, she said that she saw someone hanging from a tree. We got speechless and immediately called the police. But this is where the story takes an even worse turn. When the police got there, she told them exactly in what tree the person was, and when they got there, there was no one. Not even a trace of a rope or any sign that someone had been there. And this was only the beginning. We decided to walk the girl back to her dorm, hoping that she would calm down once she was in a familiar place. As we walked, she kept looking over her shoulder, as if she expected someone or something to follow us. Halfway to her dorm, we passed by some large trees, and as we got closer, I noticed something hanging from one of the lower branches. A faint, almost translucent figure swaying gently in the breeze. I stopped dead in my tracks. My friend followed my gaze and gasped, stepping back instinctively. The girl hadn't noticed it yet, but as we stood frozen in place, the figure seemed to become more solid, more real. It was unmistakably a person, their head tilted at an unnatural angle, the noose around their neck barely visible in the fading light. I felt a cold sweat break out across my forehead, and my legs felt like they were made of lead. The girl finally turned to see what had stopped us, and when she saw the figure, she let out a blood-curdling scream. Man. She bolted towards her dorm, leaving my friend and me standing there, too shocked to move. The figure didn't disappear this time. It just hung there, swaying ever so slightly, as if it was mocking us. We finally snapped out of our trance and ran to the dorm. When we got there, she was huddled in the lobby with tears streaming down her face, and we were still in disbelief. Over the next few days, my friend and I kept our distance from that part of campus. The story of the hanging figure spread like wildfire, and soon everyone had their own version of what had happened. Some claimed it was just a prank, others swore they had seen the figure too, but no one could explain what we had experienced. One evening, as I was walking back to my dorm alone at around 3 p.m., I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I passed by the same tree where we had seen the figure and couldn't help but glance up. The branch was empty, but I felt a chill run down my spine as if the air itself was holding its breath. Just as I was about to turn away, I heard a faint creaking sound, like literally a rope straining under weight. My blood ran cold and I forced myself to keep walking, refusing to look back. I just reached my dorm and locked the door behind me. The next morning, we found out that the tree had been cut down during the night. No one knew who had ordered it, and the maintenance staff claimed they had no record of it. But I couldn't help but wonder if it had been done to silence whatever dark history was tied to that place. For what we knew after that, the sightings stopped, and the campus returned to its usual routines. But even today, I can't help but still talk about it a lot with my friend that was with me in there.